Why? Why is Maine ranked so close to last for its business environment? Why are we ranked near the bottom for education? And what about housing and energy prices? Why are they so high here? What is going on, and what might we do to change this downward spiral? My name is Jonathan Bush, and I am one of the many who are in on the secret that Maine is the greatest place to live and raise kids in the world. My family's been here for more than 100 years, and we're not going anywhere no matter what. But today's Mainers are forced to choose between Maine and the American dream. Maine For Keeps is an organization dedicated to the idea of the Maine dream, that Mainers can experience the American dream without having to leave Maine to do it. Maine For Keeps is a lot of things. It's a policy framework, a coalition of successful leaders ready to lean in on Maine, and it's a podcast telling the story as broadly as we can. Each week, we'll dive into these questions and more with exciting guests from every corner of our great state and nation. We'll talk about what works and what doesn't, what our leaders are doing and not doing that's making life harder and easier for Mainers. Our goal? Solutions to make Maine even better for families and businesses. So strap in and join us as we talk about creating a Maine For Keeps. I know you now as a gentleman statesman of Maine, but I met you as a roommate of Billy Bush at Colby College.
Yeah, and we might not use the word gentleman there.
Did you never leave Maine? Did you fall in love with Maine at Colby, before Colby? When did you say, holy Moses, never leaving Maine?
That's where I am now. But after college, so as you know, 4 years at Colby College, a lot of time with your brother. If you remember, your brother moved to New Hampshire after that. I was living in my parents' basement for a little bit and driving in Massachusetts, and I was driving up to Lake Winnipesaukee almost every other weekend, maybe thinking college hadn't quite ended yet. And then Billy moved to DC and moved in with the roommate that I had for all 4 years at Colby. They were living together, and they put on a hardcore press for me to, get out of my parents' basement and move down to DC. And
a major Maine movement. Get out of your parents' basement. It's going to catch on. And you're here to say it was the right move.
Right. For the record, I did have a job, and I was working. I'm not sure how much you knew my dad, but living in my
selling food.
That was not an option to not work. But I picked up, moved to DC, moved in with my college roommate James, our other friend Roger, who I think you've met before, and Billy. And we lived in Upper Georgetown area. We all had jobs. We're all in our early 20s, kind of making it happen.
This is the thing, right? People do well in Maine, and then I'd like to do well, so they leave, so they can go have the American dream where there's jobs, and then eventually somehow figure out a way to be financially secure enough to come back. What was it that got you in as a professional? You're a high potential professional couple. How'd you get back in?
So as as someone that grew up in New England, went to college in Maine, and was having, fun in my early to mid 20s in DC. DC was never home. It was never a place to put down roots. And as Sally and I decided to figure out, hey, where do we want to build our lives together, build a family? Well, where do we want to, put down our roots? We said,
that's Maine.
That's Maine.
That's it, right? That's our superpower. Well, maybe we should have kids. Ooh, maybe we should go to Maine.
Right.
That's when you want to have kids, you got to go to Maine. That's
exactly. And I like how that's the state's draw.
You certainly don't come here to make a fortune. Yet.
No, we took a pay cut.
Yeah. So you guys say, look, we want to make babies, so we got to make them in Maine. We'll take a pay cut. Did you go right to Maine to Maine Company, or did you start somewhere else?
It's interesting, and I don't know how much you'll remember this. I went back. We said the first one of us to get a job we're going to pick up and go. And before I forget, there was one other really big kind of life-changing event, not just for us, but kind of for the country that made us move faster, and that was 9/11. Um, we were living in DC.
Make a family and be far from the bomb.
I saw the smoke from the Pentagon, working in Georgetown at that point, and actually got married the weekend after 9/11. So 9/11 was on a Tuesday. We got married that following weekend. Sally had flown up to Boston the night before 9/11, and we honeymooned in Maine. We just happened to be honeymooning in Maine, and it was at that point we're like, you know what, we got to make this happen. It was kind of just a thought, whatever, but we're just like, we got to make it happen. So we said the first one of us to get a job, we'll both pick up and move. She got a job first, as you know, she's smarter than I am and more talented. She got a job. I went back to school for my MBA. As I was finishing my MBA, I reconnected with you. I don't know if you remember this. I was taking my final course on new venture creation. I called Billy and I said, "Hey, would your brother talk to me about what Athena Health's doing and how he started it?" And I did maybe a 2-hour interview. Roles were kind of reversed. I did about a 2-hour interview about Athena Health, what happened. I remember asking you, I said, "Have you heard of this thing called HIPAA?" And I think your direct quote was, "Have I heard of it? It's like a disease," or something like that. It was, yeah, it was all encompassing. You were building that. We finished talking, and you said, "So, by the way, what are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, believe it or not, I just moved to Maine. I had just started at Maine Company." I said, my new job is I'm helping companies move to Maine. I've been doing it maybe 4 months, 3 or 4 months, helping companies relocate up here or expand into here." And your quote to me was, "You're kidding me. Could you help my company do that?" And oh, lifelong dream. And that was the beginning. And I remember because I started I opened up
What
a
was
new
that, like
file for
'05 or I can't even imagine when.
052504. So,
'04,
yep. So
May
that was
25th, '04. God, that
that was
you.
your client number.
Oh my
And
God, I'm a client number.
yep,
That's
that was your
great.
client number. And in, I think it was
Well,
November or
that's amazing. The way you describe it now, I would have never, because you were so seasoned and smooth and bringing the governor and basically the whole state you got wrapped around our board of directors, helping me to sell the idea of a big operations center up here.
Well, it did take a lot, and that's the thing about the work that Maine and Company does. Projects take a long time, right? So 04 was when we started, 07 was when we cut the ribbon. Uh, and over that period of time, actually, because we started when you were, I think you had 200 people on Moody Street in Waltham.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
yeah, and I remember,
200 people. That's like the cafeteria now.
right, I remember talking to one of your former employees, Nancy Brown, about when you guys were getting ready to go public and you rang the bell on the NASDAQ. And
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
it's like you click the mouse. It's kind of a little bit, yeah.
yeah,
Not the same
I
thing as
didn't know that.
they don't have a bell.
Well, it was pretty, it was exciting for me in my job, especially in my role, and I was still fairly new in the role, to work with a company at that startup stage, watching it grow, watching it attract new investors with an eye towards Maine, getting to be a publicly traded company, watching all of that. I mean, it was an incredible education for me, leading up to the point where Athena Health buys that facility in Belfast. It was, remember, you know this better than anyone. It had 4 quadrants in it, and watching you build that quadrant by quadrant in that facility in Belfast, Maine, to get to what, 800 to 1,000 employees, all working for Athena Health, trying to, grappling with the same issues we're grappling now, but how do we control the costs of healthcare? Watching, you as you took people. Remember, one of the things that we talked about was there is Mainers as a workforce can do more than what they were being asked to do.
Let me ask you this. We're describing the movement of Athena Health operations to Maine, but I was a, Maine fanatic CEO and founder. How do you sell? Is that what you look for? Yeah, I'm going to find a guy who's grew up going to Maine and is a Maine fanatic, or if not, like, what is your pitch book? What is your, when you're going to get a company and move them to Maine, what are the top three, pitch lines that get them, that get you going on a pursuit?
Pitch lines aren't really what I'm good at, to be honest with you. What I need to do, and frankly, I think I did not only with you, but with your whole team at Athena Health, was I develop relationships with people. I'm a very big, when I'm in sales, I'm a big believer in the relationship. We're not good at the transaction. Frankly, in this state, you're not going to win on the transactional aspect of it. You're going to have to work with people to maybe see things that don't always show up in the spreadsheet.
So what are the things? I mean, you use relationship, not P.T. Barnum and with a big hat or whatever in front of the crowd, and a cane, but you're delivering good news. There's got to be some good news that move these deals along. What are the good news that you in your relationship engagement are saying? I mean, one's got to be, your employees are going to want to raise kids here, but what else do you?
So for companies that, my question, I always reverse it. I do that old salesman thing where I turn the question back on them. And our question is always, what do you need to be successful? I'm not going to tell you what's great here until I know what moves you. So what is it that you need to be successful? And I remember what companies that were in your stage. And if you remember, what Athena Health's project did was it catalyzed a whole bunch of other health IT companies coming to Maine. So after you came, we worked with Notify MD. From Notify MD, we worked with...
We ended up with a bunch of companies. There was Notify, there was Devoted, there was Grand Rounds.
Yep.
We took the show on the road for a while there.
Yeah, we had about 4 or 5 other health IT companies. Remember, we were able to build it at the time. We worked then with UNE. They created a health IT, University of New England. We created a health IT little curriculum or focus in some of the stuff that they did. So we were able to run with that for a number of years. But for every company,
sounds like a pitch angle, right? Because Maine's so small, you could literally call the university, "Hey, how about opening this curriculum?" And they do. Can you imagine doing that in Massachusetts? Like, get out of here,
And I think, as you know, I'm on the board of directors of the community college.
You weren't then when you got them to do that, but now it's about you call yourself.
Right. and it's something that we do for a lot of companies. What is it that you need to be successful? For a longest time, it was all about workforce. Yeah. Workforce. All right, great. So there are 2 parts of workforce development. There's the initial training. You're scaling up, you're hiring people. We got to get your training programs in place so that people know how to run the network that makes your business successful. Then we take it to the next step. All right, now you have your team. We need to make sure there's long-term pipeline of employees. Let's build that curriculum so that people are graduating and coming through the system, so that as people grow in their careers, as you grow as an organization, you either need to backfill or you're creating the next division of your company and you need people to kind of fit in there. We've got a pipeline of people coming through. So we get that workforce development. The way I think about it, you have short-term training, long-term education.
And in your experience, because you're kind of up against other states, you get a bake-off like every year. Like, these guys are always, there's nobody who's looking at only Maine to decide where to go next. So when you do that, when they decide yes, Maine, and they come, is that sort of, what's the word, bespoke workforce development, the cozy network with the universities and the community colleges? Is that one of the things that we win on?
It's absolutely one of the things we win on. Your ability,
and that's probably why you ended up on that board, because they're a key tool for you to move shit to Maine.
And it helps as they're figuring out what their future curriculum should be.
Right. They want to be useful. And if companies come to Maine for them, that's certainly a definition of useful.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, yeah.
So we've got family, we've got custom workforce development, family raising, custom workforce development. What is there any others that are like that when you win What else sort of shows up as the reason?
So for a lot, so the reason I'm hesitating, so I'm thinking back to when we did things versus economic development in a post-COVID world, as some things are kind of shifting. So I think it's
Well, let's
important
get to
to.
that.
Okay.
Let's get to post-COVID in a minute. But in a normal, in a pre-COVID world, is there a third thing that was killer?
Yeah, it's related to workforce. It was the and again, it was hard to quantify, but our companies had much less turnover than when a company was operating in another environment or
Got it.
another
Sort of
geography.
workforce loyalty data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you hire a Mainer stays with you. It's
Got it.
is as long as you
I
treat them.
remember vividly the pitch, and you did a pitch. You did a very nice pitch in front of a very big group, by the way. You're also a good pitch man, not just a relationship guy. But you said the Staubach Group is one of these selection consultants. They select sites, oh, put your call center in North Dakota because you get a special tax break or whatever. And you said, don't be fooled by Maine's low unemployment in the Staubach analysis, because Mainers will work on anything. But if you give them a job with benefits and a career path, they will be there and they will stay with you. I remember that. And we certainly had that experience. Belfast wasn't exactly dripping with unemployed people dying to go to work. And we ramped to 1,000 people. And just like you said, they stayed. It was because they had been doing 3 jobs, Walmart, fishing, plowing, or
And
whatever.
none of them have benefits.
Yeah, and none of them had benefits, and none of them was like, you don't get a promotion. You get a promotion from yourself because you get a new plow with the pinching front or whatever. But you don't get, that lift that comes where you can, I'm putting my kid through college, or I own this house now or whatever.
Yep. And they want to be Mainers want to be part of something.
There's that's sort of the community energy that makes you want to raise kids here. I can imagine there being a thirst for that same feeling when you go to work.
Yep. It's absolutely there. And the people that get that are companies that were in that stage where you were. I mean, Athena Health created a culture, and people wanted to be a part of that culture. Now, there is a double. There is a different side to that. If it turns out that you are a bad employer or you don't treat your people well, word will spread. And yeah, and you won't be able to hire anyone.
No one will feel bad for you.
Right. Yep. We
I do love that about Maine. I know it's bad, but I sort of love it anyway.
We worked on a project. I'll never forget this. It was a call center project. They wanted to. It was a third-party call center project, and they wanted to hire. I'm going to make this because it was so long ago. I'm directionally accurate, maybe not 100% accurate. Let's say they wanted to hire 1,000 or 500 employees, and they told us what their wages were, and they were competitive, but barely competitive. They maybe 5% above retail. And they told us, I'll never forget this. They said, we want our turnover to be at least 60%. And I'm writing all this stuff down. I'm a big note taker, right? And I just stopped. I go, whoa, you mean at most 60%? I've never heard someone say that they want a higher turnover rate. And he's like, no, it has to be at least 60%. That way we can rotate people through and keep our wages down. I'll never forget this. And I'm like, and I tried to be
Vader comes to Maine. Jesus.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that you guys are terrible. You're not going to. Yeah. But I did say our population density isn't significant enough to support
a mill.
To support an employment level at that level with that much turnover.
All right, we've got to get to it, Peter. We've described this wonderfulness, but they don't all come. Obviously, we've got like 9 headquarters. We've got tons of business, Maine. We've got Wex, we've got LL Bean, we've got Wex, but LL Bean. Like, when you don't win, why not? They say, Peter, I'm sorry, but
if we get into a multi-state competition where they're evaluating spreadsheets and evaluating incentive programs, and that's going to be the driving factor we're going to lose.
So one is we just don't pay them. We don't pay them off to come.
Correct. We don't have a deal closing fund. Our incentive programs are fairly modest and frankly always under attack at the legislature when you compare them nationally and frankly internationally.
And what about just the native business? Like, how does our corporate tax rate compare? Or is there a baseline sort of spreadsheeting deficit where when you put us on a spreadsheet, we don't look as good as we should?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things that are good about doing business in Maine where companies can be successful that just don't show up on a spreadsheet. Our tax rates, again, on the spreadsheet look high. When you look at certain other states that maybe argue that they have, lower taxes all around, but then you start factoring in some of their hidden taxes, but some of those don't always show up on a spreadsheet.
What's a hidden tax that we don't have?
So one of our neighboring states has not only a business tax, they've got a franchise tax and to go along with their corporate sales tax. I'm messing it up a little bit, but they whack their businesses fairly hard, even though
because they want to be 0 and 0 on the consumer side.
Right. So there are some gains, and when you're only looking at a spreadsheet's two-dimensional. It's got no ability to kind of discuss the nuances. And being successful in Maine means winning on the margins, winning some of those nuanced things. And when those don't show up, and if you're only in a corporate boardroom of a Fortune 100 company, and it's going up and up and up and up there, and they're in the end just evaluating, that lower right-hand corner of the spreadsheet, we get hit pretty hard.
So let me make sure I heard this right. What I've got so far is on the spreadsheet, less kind of bonus booty plan for, bounty for coming to us, which is sort of a short-term thing, and more taxes on the face of it, like, and maybe it's not as bad as people think because the franchise fees and other things maybe slip in other states. Is that right?
Yep. Because in the end,
is there a third? I like 3 because and then my ADD kicks in and I don't remember the 4th. So
yeah, no, your ADD works better than mine does. It gets stuck at 2. But again, I'll always go back to what does a company need to be successful. So if a company is, if energy costs are the main driver of the company's success, chances are they're not looking at New England. Energy costs. Again,
are we the worst or the second? Where are we? We're pretty bad, right?
The New England grid is an expensive neighborhood. It's not just Maine. It's that whole. It's our whole region. And as you may know, we're on a regional grid, ISO New England, and the energy policies of all the individual states, get kind of wrapped up, and it's just into the regional grid.
Sort of a spaghetti handshake. I can't do it because they won't do it, and can't get another pipeline because I have to get it through New York. And Kathy Hochul's gonna, she's afraid of her shadow. She's not gonna.
There's a fabulous app out there that I use frequently. In fact, the former president of Central Maine Power told me to check it out. It's called ISO New England. And you look at it, you can see the energy costs of all the different New England states. You can see what type of energy is on the grid at any point in time, what's powering our industries. It's really a fascinating look. So as a general rule, New England's expensive for energy. Now, if you need to be in New England, because on the flip side, we've got a really dense market in terms of a dense population, not just in Maine. Maine's population, right. But the New England area is fairly dense. We say, actually, even if you go beyond that, within a 1-day truck drive, you want to service a market of within a 1-day truck drive of Maine, depending where you are in Maine and frankly how aggressive you can be in your truck. You're probably looking at a population of 100 to 120 million people. It's a lot of people. So if you need to be in Maine, when it comes to energy costs, we actually do pretty well compared to the rest of New England. But we are in an expensive neighborhood.
Okay.
The other thing that is, especially these days, that's hurting us is our and we could do the whole talk on this if you wanted, is the challenges in the regulatory and permitting world.
Okay. I was waiting. I mean, you and I were you there? Maybe I went in maybe I took your badge. I can't remember. There was a Association of General Contractors meeting.
Oh yeah, you and I were there.
And you're on the stage. You're
Yeah.
the honored panelist.
Yep.
And the state environmental commissioner had just said, maybe that day or that week, she no longer knows how far behind she is. Like, doesn't know when she will be able to open your application, to look at it, to tell you how long you can wait to get an answer, which maybe no. Was that a real that's got to be hard to compete with other. Meanwhile, the governor of Pennsylvania, the guy blows up the bridge, or bridge collapses, and 2 weeks later, there's a bridge there. Boom.
It's it is a big competitive challenge for us. Yeah. Now I know the commissioner of DEP. I've had the pleasure of working,
and she's bipartisan. She's not a she's not a
working both administration,
not a
both
grinder,
both
but there's
parties.
something about whatever we've accumulated. What is it?
So there are complete structural issues. I mean that are there. There are a couple of things going on. One, when we talk about the structural issue, I went to a talk where she laid out, like, the people that are managing the permits. They have to have their PE, their professional engineering license. And
read the permit?
Pardon me?
To read the application?
Yeah, to read and evaluate. It's not, I mean, there's the permitting process is fairly deep. And you've got to have people with those skills to be able to do it, whether you're in the Land Bureau, the Air Bureau, the Water Bureau, all these different things. You need to understand where the skills lie. Their wages are set by state government. So people with these advanced degrees or professional certifications, I believe she said their starting wage is $47,000 a year and maxes out at $74,000 a year.
Ah.
So they've got a workforce problem.
Now, does every state you compete with actually prospectively look at every application with an engineer? Do some states say, look, here are the rules, get a ticket on the website and go to work, and our, smaller number of, inspectors will come see you? Or does it always have to be, does every state sort of sit there and do a complete review before you get yes or no?
I believe that there has to be some level of review. I don't know any states that doesn't have that. But there are some states that systematically move faster than what we do. Now we do see, and frankly, one of the things that we have going for us, at least, in some circles, in many circles, actually, we have high environmental standards. And there are other states that have high environmental standards, but you've got to be able to get through the process. And right now the process it's a throughput issue in a lot of ways. It's getting stuck. And if you're a technology guy. I mean, you built Athena Health by developing a new technology to hack the system, for lack of a better expression.
Yep. And we didn't need to prove that it worked before we did it. We could just do it. People try it, iterate it, as opposed to sort of have definitive evidence that it'll always not pollute or.
Right. But the actual system of moving a permit through the process is incredibly antiquated at DEP. They will be the first person to tell you. I remember you used to share with me, at least I don't know if it's still the case, but in the health world, how much things move by fax and by mail.
Yeah. Yeah.
and just how slow they were to adopt to new technologies.
Yes. This is that.
This is that on
Yeah.
steroids.
On steroids or without steroids, as the case may be.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Another one. Is this another one? I remember you and I were. There was the wonderful Israeli guy who was trying to start the fish farm up in Jonesport. And then, and he got all the permits. The town wanted it. There was no NIMBYism. Everybody was excited. And then one sort of anonymous family starts suing them and just sues them into neutral indefinitely. Like knowing that their suit is specious, does the suit, drags them down. And so the capital cost of staying engaged, eventually the poor CEO, out he goes because he's been buried. Is that ability to just go on and on and on in the courts with very little grounds? Is that normal in every state, or is that a Maine special, sort of a unintended consequence of power to the people?
It's it is something that happens a lot here. I really can't. I mean, I don't know enough.
Not
about
on your spreadsheet with all the other states. Number of times that people sue someone to death. Yeah.
Right. But it brings up the second part of the regulatory environment where we do struggle is now everything that I said about getting a permit application through DEP. The fact is you can still do it. When I looked at, the projects that we've worked on recently that have run into challenges, I have been in these land-based aquaculture projects. We're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment. Now, even the projects that never made it forward, they were still able to get their permits. You look at the project in Belfast, project in Jonesport, project in Bucksport.
Yeah.
Yep. All of those made it through the regulatory gauntlet and got their permits. Okay. But if you look at, and could in theory have begun construction, but what happens after that? There are challenges and there are efficiencies that we can find in the regulatory process. I do think when I look at the leadership of the DEP, and frankly of some of the people in the state, that there is a desire to see projects get done. Where it gets stopped, and COVID absolutely, again, made this process 100 times worse, was after you get your permits, after you get through the regulatory process, the opposition groups, not the state, the opposition groups then sue the state, and then it gets stalled in the
This is it. This is what we watched.
Yep. Then and COVID shut down the courts. So there was an incredible backlog as they've reopened. Everyone's trying to dig out from the backlog.
Yeah.
And every permit, so the project in Jonesport that you talk about, you're 100% right. The town one family opposed this. They came out, they forced the town to have a vote on this project. And the town voted, I think it was 200 to 100. All the residents of the town came out. And it was one of the highest turnouts they'd ever had for a local.
Desperately want this thing.
Yep. Came out in support
of the. You go to that town and there's there's the old band hall and it's just slowly sinking into the earth. And you're thinking, God, if there was a real full benefits plant up here, that band hall would, you can imagine the whole town waking up. And
we learned, it was really an important lesson that we learned when we went there. And again, remember how I said we asked the company, what do you want to be successful? We asked the community, what do you guys need?
Diversify the freaking bug market, right? I mean, these are people who love the fish business, and the fish, the only one is lobsters, and it's not a stable market forever.
Well, two things about that, and this is where it got really deep. For the longest time, Jonesport was a two-industry town, lobsters and canneries. Canneries went away. Now, but what was the most important thing for them as a community was they were worried about losing their high school, losing the identity of who they were, that they didn't have enough people, weren't generating enough revenue to support their high school, and having, you know, 200, $300 million investment of a year-round employment was going to be the type of thing that was going to help their high school stay open. And at first I was like, I needed to learn more. So I'm like, all right, I went to the high school. I went to a meeting at the high school. And as soon as you walk in that high school door, you see all the golden basketballs for winning the state championships. And all of us, it just hit you like, a bucket of cold water to the face, like how important that this is to this community. And
I mean, that story is one of the most, and there are a lot of these. I sort of call them, Maine's wall of shame. Where this beautiful idea. I mean, growing fish locally, as opposed to schlepping it in from China and Chile, where it's been raised on shit and shipped in bunker oil across the ocean, as opposed to growing it by Maine's environmental standards and shipping it locally, like vastly good for the environment, vastly good for public health, to get more good fish, high quality protein into the food supply, and a hope for salvation of Jonesport, this incredible community with an incredible history that had half of its economic complex, killed off, and a perfect match, like cannery, aquaculture, not bad. And then it just dies off with 204, 100 against. The 100 has it.
And now so it's all being, dragged through the court. They've gotten all their permits. They keep losing, they appeal. So for a project like this, you needed, state, local, and federal permits. And then when you appeal those, they go to, when you appeal the local permits, you go to the zoning board of appeals. They lost that. Then they went to the Superior.
The haters lost it, or the fish company lost it?
The haters.
Okay.
They lost to the zoning board of appeals. Then you go to the Superior Court, and then you go to the law court, and they keep losing. So that's just for the local permits.
Yeah.
Then you have the state.
Meanwhile, the capital and the commitment on the business side is just.
Yeah, I mean, the economic conditions are very different in 2025 than they were in 2020. I mean, just interest rates are low alone. And I believe this fervently, that the opposition groups know that they're going to lose and are just hoping to delay projects,
just wear them down,
to wear them out.
So is there something here? Let's switch to solutions here. Let's take a minute. I mean, who knows, but is there something like a finite appeal or a final ruling? Is there something that other states have that Maine could have? Faster throughput on the courts. What would get us out of this? Because this isn't the only example of this kind of holdup.
No, we saw it with the power line.
Power line, the Belfast thing, the Jonesport thing. It's like it's a go-to kit for haters in Maine. Do other states have a solution here that we should have?
I'm a huge believer in general of finding ideas that work in other places and stealing them. And we can even claim them for our own if they're effective, if we want. But there are, but we actually have some of the solutions here that we've done in some other instances. For example, there are some projects that can, in certain industries, I believe it's in some of the alternative or clean energy industries, where you're able to go right from permit to the law court, or you can jump some that's written in legislation where they can say, all right, we need this. Let's jump some of the steps.
Has a state ever had their own legal team defend the permits that they've given for the business?
That's exactly what happens. So when they sue the state, when they sue to overturn a permit, they are suing the state, and it's the attorney general that has to defend these permits in court against the other people. So the opposition group in Jonesport is suing the state of Maine. They are not suing.
They're not suing the business. But then
Nope.
the state of Maine has to be, sprightly and aggressive and hard, biting back when they give a permit, or it becomes a go-to solution for the haters. Yeah.
Our friends at DEP, because they're so rigorous during the permitting process, their permits are almost never overturned.
Got it.
I mean, it's this whole point
It's
of,
just the rope-a-dope.
yep, delay.
We're gonna leave a file open on the rope-a-dope. I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Is there a sentinel effect that we could create by getting a good AG to fight harder on these, so that people don't say, no problem, we'll just rope-a-dope?
The other thing that I think it's important to know is most of the money, at least our research is showing that a lot of the money coming to fight these projects are not coming from Mainers. So yeah, I don't want to sugarcoat things. Our DEP has very high standards. It's hard to get through, but you can get through it. What's happening is people from outside the state are coming in and preventing our economy from growing. That's the challenge.
Ooh, that's a whole nother episode. We got to think about how to get, maybe we'll get those. Is this kind of like an abstract notion of environmentalism? Oh, I'm for the environment, so I'm against aquaculture, or something like that? Is that what draws outside money to kill such a wonderful project?
Well, a lot of times it's the vacationers.
My view. My view is worth 1,000 people's entire careers and livelihoods. I must have a nice view.
Yep. So a lot of it is like that.
Ooh.
A lot of the people that
reminds me of in Mass, there was the wind farm. Like, no, we have to kill the wind farm because we don't want to see it in our view. How do you know whether you like a wind farm in your view or not?
So
you have no idea. That's ridiculous. I'd be thrilled to look at a fish farm. Anyway, what do I know? Last thing, looking forward, Peter, where are you finding the best juice? What do you see in the next, 25, 26, 27? What are the kinds of companies where you say, comparative advantage from Maine, we're going to win these and get them in? What are the areas that are your hotspots?
So what I'm really excited about, and a lot of this is coming out of the post-COVID world.
Yeah, we were doing pre-COVID. This is our segue. Good.
Yeah. So if you look at how businesses were making decisions pre-COVID, it was all about, and I'm going to use a tortured metaphor, I apologize, and then I'll use something that's a little bit more succinct that I stole this morning. But if you look at the people, the way they built supply chains, it was all about long, lean supply chains, wringing out every nickel along the way.
Yeah, no flab. Yeah. And then when there's a choke, no supply.
Right. And that's what COVID demonstrated. I was listening to just this morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was on CNBC, and he said in 6 words what I've been trying to say, for the last year. He's like, optimal supply chains are not reliable supply chains.
Right. There's no ruggedization. There's no reliability. There's no optionality if the thing snips off.
Right. So there's a category of products.
Maine is your flux capacitor.
Yeah. There are certain things, T-shirts will probably remain overseas or whatever, but there are certain priorities that people need to survive every day that don't
and are
need.
You thinking warehouse it, or are you thinking like cushion supply, or are you thinking actually make it?
I'm thinking making it. You're going to need to produce protein.
Made in Maine. Follow me. M-E. I love it.
You're going to need to make produce, protein. I think building materials. I think our forest industry is.
Yeah, the forest industry we didn't get to. We should come back to it because, there used to be kind of an economic complex where you'd have the growing, you'd have the harvesting, then you'd have the pulp, and you'd have paper. Now paper is like, for what? And so what are we going to do? Could there be building supplies? Could we do something besides just export our raw materials for someone else to make money on? I was shocked in that economic complex, the average GDP per person was really small, because the final product that left Maine was really, not developed. It wasn't, they weren't exporting a house. They weren't even exporting a subassembling. They were just exporting, lumber.
The key to that, I think, and this is where we worked with Department of Economic and Community Development as they were developing a new incentive program. And the whole goal of it, if you want to increase productivity per worker, there is a direct correlation between productivity per worker and capital expenditures. You've got to have CapEx spending. So they put together a new program to encourage companies to make more capital investments in the state of Maine. And I think, and I think that's going to be applicable in the in the world of the forest economy. What to do next? Those are jobs that probably won't. They're harder to move. First of all, second of all, you're going to get more production per person by investing in the newest equipment, newest material. That's why we're excited for land-based aquaculture in a lot of ways. It is new.
And you can go right up the food chain. You can grow the feed, you can feed it to the fish. Now you can sell fish, but you can also make fillets, you can make stock, you can make chowder, you can add value inside the state before it ships out. I love that.
We've seen companies that are making animal feed out of wood, extracting the protein from them. So imagine that level of circularity within the economy. But we're big believers that you're going to be seeing like you said, our forests are not making paper like they used to.
And that should be lemonade. It's like, great, now we'll make houses, or we'll make,
or we'll use it, where
sophisticated things that cost more so that we can bring tech and keep jobs getting, there's this idea of unemployment is great, but I'm much more interested in kind of the American dream side of that, which is that employment gets more interesting and profitable for people as they improve, as they develop, as opposed to like your earlier example in this podcast of we really need a lot of unemployment because we're just going to burn them out and let them leave. Like,
right.
Ooh, that's
terrible.
That is some rough stuff. I mean, God bless your free country and all, but please do it somewhere else.
Right.
Okay. So I love that. So this idea of maybe not all of the product, but a redundancy supply of product based in Maine, local, cheap for our neighborhood.
Affordable is the word that I'll use.
Affordable, but also vastly more reliable, instantly available, as opposed to, oh my God, we need a ship, for 2 weeks and et cetera. I love it. Anything else?
I'm keeping everything, not everything, but I'm keeping a lot of the stuff that we're talking about kind of into that lens of what needs to be produced. And I don't know what role, frankly, I don't know what role all the tariff talk and stuff like that's going to play. I mean, it's creating, a little bit of craziness. However that settles, I'm still very convinced that Maine is uniquely placed to be able to be an affordable option for companies to locate production, to support and provide goods and services to a population within a one-day drive of 100 million people. And there aren't a lot of places in the country that can say that.
Yeah, that's an interesting hit list. What do you need a redundant supply of within a one-day drive of 100 million people? That's a really good, let's end on that. That is a perfect. What is Maine going to be? It's going to be absolutely everything you need within a one-day drive of 100 million people.
Yep. And we're seeing it happen.
Peter DelGreco, CEO of Maine Company, best cheerleader, booster, rep for the state of Maine ever to exist. Thank you for joining the Maine For Keeps podcast today.
Thank you. I had fun.
I did too. Thanks for tuning in to Maine For Keeps. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on social media, click and share with your friends, or get on to mainforkeeps.com. If you have ideas for new content or podcast guests, or if you'd like to give us some money to support the effort, be sure to click and send. We're at team@mainforkeeps.com, and I'm at jb@mainforkeeps.com. Thanks. See you soon.